When you're drafting a deck in Arena, there are certain neutral cards you can't pass up, but over time these top tier cards have changed, and minions that once dominated the arena have fallen out of favor. Let's take a look at some of the best Arena cards, past and present. The Chillwind Yeti was the king of Arena throughout Hearthstone's beta and many months after release. With 5 health and 4 attack, it would regularly control the board during turns 4, 5, and even 6, and still remained a good play even later into the match, as its good stat line meant it remained a viable threat. It has never had any crazy mechanics or card text. It doesn't even have a minion type. If your opponent wants to remove the Yeti, it will often force them into making unfavorable exchanges. Today, however, the Yeti has fallen down the tier lists, and while it's still not a bad choice, new additions to the game have made it outdated. In particular, its mechanical cousin, who maintains the same stat line and cost, but gets a death rattle and a mech minion type for potential synergies. Spellbreaker's popularity was very strange and largely the result of outside influences rather than the card's own merits. It's certainly not a terrible card, but there were a number of months when it showed up frequently in many players' Arena decks, and its popularity was way beyond what it deserved. The reason for this was a very popular card tier list made by Trump, which ranked it as the #1 card to draft in Arena, and as one of the most popular players in the world, the Hearthstone community was quick to take his advice. Further down the line, however, Trump admitted he had overvalued silence, and along with changes to cards like Twilight Drake, the Spellbreaker was quickly booted from its top spot. The Dark Iron Dwarf was once one of the best Arena cards available. However, during Hearthstone's closed beta, it was hit with a change to its card text. Once upon a time, its +2 damage battlecry was a permanent buff, meaning stat-wise, he provided 10 points, putting him 1 ahead of the Chillwind Yeti. The only drawback was if you didn't have a minion out on the board already, it forced you to permanently buff an enemy minion, but for the most part, that wasn't a major issue. Blizzard, however, decided to change the buff's effect to more in line with the Abusive Sergeant, and only last for the turn the Dwarf was played. It's still a good card, but with the changes to its battlecry and new additions to the game, it has fallen out of the top few spots within most tier lists. However, not all cards rise and fall. The Azure Drake is a great example of a card that has been consistently good since day one. It might have never reached the #1 spot in most lists, but it's certainly always in the top few, as it's one of the best value minions in the game. First, when you play him, you also draw a card, giving you more options in your hand and giving you presence on the board. Secondly, he provides +1 spell damage, which while not necessarily game-changing can certainly be used in the right deck, and to be honest, it's essentially a bonus on an already great card value. Lastly, it's a 4/4, which is slightly under par with its 5 mana, but is still able to hold its own and trade well against other minions. Honestly, not a lot of cards top Azure Drake, as I'm sure it'll be sitting in the top ranks of most tier lists for a long time to come, and with the dragon synergies added in the Blackrock Mountain, he's gotten a little stronger too. Lately, however, there sits a new king of the Arena throne. The piloted Shredder has been topping the tier lists and proving that he's a new dominant force in the Arena meta. His bigger brothers, of course, deserve a mention. Sneed's Old Shredder and the piloted Sky Golem both are great choices, but the odds of drafting one of them is much lower than the common piloted Shredder. First, his stat line means he can trade up against a number of higher mana minions, and secondly, his death rattle means that almost any trade with him comes off in your favor. By summoning up a 2 mana minion, the Shredder is very hard to play against and often forces your opponent to make inefficient plays. The average 2 mana minion will have 4 stats in total. This added to the Shredder's 7 gives a whopping 11 in total. His sticky nature means even if they remove the Shredder, you'll likely still have a minion on the board at the start of your next turn, and more than half of these 2-drops have a mechanic of some kind, most of which will work in your favor. Compare the Shredder to some of our previous Arena champions and you can see why he's almost an automatic choice. Better stats, harder to remove or play against, and he even gets some mech synergies. The new king of the Arena has had his crown for a while now, but the grand tournament is here and perhaps someone will knock out the Shredder from his top spot. Some people are ranking the Pit Fighter and the North Sea Kraken as some of the better neutral cards to come out of the grand tournament for Arena. Much like the Chillwind Yeti, the Pit Fighter has a strong stat line. It comfortably defeats the Sludge Belcher, the Sunwalker, and other popular 5/5 legendaries like Sylvanas and Lotheb. As for the Kraken, it's a big late game body on the board and brings some solid removal with its battle cry. And what are some of your personal favorite Arena cards from the past? Perhaps the Harvest Golem, or maybe even others? Let me know in the comments below. Till next time, enjoy the game.